Hey guys, guess what? No surprise, it's the mangled Monterey again. You'll remember in the last episode, we made sure the pickup finally worked by mounting the input jack, and then we went through any of the weirdness that developed by this thing coming back into itself after being manipulated and glued and clamped and all this. We got all that together, and then we spent ad nauseum time explaining why I put a bolt in the neck, how important it is that everything is lined up when you finally put the thing back together, because your action can vary because of what you do right here. So we did all that in preparation for this episode, which is to get this back on the guitar lined up in a way that the neck angle is good, everything is done cracking and splitting, and then, and only then, can we finally put the back binding on, seal up the patient, and think about getting the fret work done. Why would you do fret work until your whole body, neck, and everything is put together? Think about that. We also, in that episode, learned a great deal about how neck stands can mess you up when you're lining up necks or even doing fret dressing or whole fret jobs. Check out the playlist up here. Let's quit talking. I don't have any power, so it's time to get to work while I have light in one of my shops, because that is an increasingly rare occurrence nowadays in Los Angeles, California, cultural capital of the world. Okay guys, we're running by flashlight here, believe it or not, but we're at the point where we're going to line up the back, and I've told you a lot about this, and the good thing about the back being off is the best time to align your neck angle if your neck is stabilized up here. So the first thing I want you to see is watch right here. Look at, can you see that moving? I can easily get that much, or 40,000 22nd of a 32nd, or 3 millimeters. Anyway, I have a neck stand up here. I have nothing here. So I put the neck stand as close to the body as I can get it, and I turn it this way, so when I'm working it leans this way, not this way so it flops over, but this way. Okay, I'm going to put it as close to the body and neck as I can get. Now I'm going to take the back. I'm not using any glue yet. I'm going to take the back, and remember that the back sits on the top of the kerfing in a way that leaves that little edge right there for binding. There's going to be a piece of binding that goes in there, okay? And there has to be that edge there. Now when we line this up, what I want to do is I want to take these clamps, okay, and I've got them adjusted ahead of time. I'm going to bring one up here, and I am going to align one side of the body to the top of the kerfing, like so. And because the guitar is angled, it wants to fight back at me. But I'm going to go right at the corner, and I'm going to tighten up this clamp and get it to where just here and only here everything lines up. I am not going to worry about anywhere else. I'm just going to put that clamp on and tighten it up good right there. Now I've got a piece of binding here I'm going to use as a gauge or a way to put things together. I want this piece of binding to tell me where the edge of the back is going to be. You see that right there? Now you can see over here that things are already starting to slip away and get out of line. So as I take a set of clamps and some binding, I can go along and make sure that everything is where it needs to be. Now when I get down at the end, it may be hanging over, it may be a little bit shy. I don't care about that. I just want to make sure that where I'm working everywhere, especially when I get down to the waist, that everything is lined up. No glue yet, guys. Okay, guys, remember, at some point, the sides of the guitar have gone this way or this way. I may need something to press them out. I may need something to squeeze them together. And the best place to do that is the waist. So, in this case, the sides have decided to bow out just a little bit. So, using this clamp, I can now go up, because my spool clamps are not super tight yet. I can go in and adjust those down to keep everything lined up with this. This is a slow, tedious process, guys. It will teach you patience even more than children. Okay, once I start getting areas where I need them to be, I can use some heavier clamps. Like these, notice that I have buffers on them and tape. And so when I get something lined up where it needs to be, I'm going to put the heavy clamp to it. Now remember, you're dealing with an arched instrument, that if you go in too far with the clamp, you're going to cause additional cracks. But these things move around quite a bit. Now we're going to get this all clamped up, and we don't have any glue on it yet. So we're going to be redoing stuff a lot. You have to be patient. Little by little until you get everything lined up. Down here it's not going to line up. I'm predicting we're probably going to have to take a little bit off here. And we'll only know how much when we finally get down here and take a pencil and trace the overlap. Okay, at some point you're going to have to turn the guitar around, because the best line of sight here is looking right over where you can again gauge the gap with a piece of binding. Okay, any little gap you have between the binding or any overlay, you're going to have to work by hand. So again, you're just going to get your clamp over it, and you're going to tighten it up just enough to keep it moving, get it stabilized, and then push everything in. The further you get into this process, the more resistant these sides are going to give you. So it's okay to take one of these clamps here, these trigger clamps, and go across here. Now you want to remember, these are going to want to slip when they're working on a radius. So if you can get it up against something where it's not going to slide, like that clamp, that's good. And you're going to hear things making some noise, because this thing does not like to be put back into place. Okay, I have literally turned this guitar around 3 or 4 times already, and now I've had to get the big clamp out, because now I'm starting to clamp cross corner to get these little fine adjustments. And then the worst part about this is once I get everything clamped up, we're going to discover that I kind of have to take little bits of it loose here and there to get the glue in. But before I do any of that, again, we're going to have to turn it over, and we're going to have to find out where the neck is. And so when you're putting your clamps on, remember, you're going to have to turn this over and stand it upside down. So if you're putting clamps on in different ways and stuff, that's not going to work out for you. The guitar isn't giving me a lot of grief. It's still pretty flexible. You also want to remember, the heavier the clamps are, the more things are going to fight back at you on the neck, because it's going to add additional weight here and there. So this is not something for somebody that gets impatient. And remember, your best friend is that little piece of binding that tells you, yep, I'm good there, I'm good there, and we're getting better over here. Now, another clamp or two. Okay, this is the part that's going to anger you. Trust me. This is the part where you want to slow it down a little bit and start asking yourself, am I laying clamps in a place where there's going to be a problem for me? Do I open up a drawer that I have right over here and hook the clamps over it? What is it that I want to do here to keep from getting frustrated? So I'm going to pull off all of these big metal clamps, because they are not going to be my friend when it comes to turning this over and checking the neck angle. Trust me. So there we go. Let's get all the clamps out of the way. We've got these little spool clamps, and we've got everything. Let me show you what's going on here so you can see. You see that? Yeah. Easy money. My camera is going to jump up out of the stand now. There we go. There we go. So now I'm going to make sure that these are all tight. And I'm going to turn this around and get this where it's just sitting like this, and there's no pressure on anything. Can you see that? Let me pop this up a little bit. We'll make sure that this tape isn't giving us false reading, but I am going to get out my Nurse Ratchet ruler from the Acton shop, and I'm going to set that there, and I'm going to make sure that everything clears the pickup okay, and then I'm going to put the bridge on it, and if the bridge isn't in the right spot now, I'm in trouble. Okay, you're seeing it live. Bridge, I'm going to put the screw adjustment screws to the back. We'll put it right where it goes. And this, look at that. Can you see that? I don't have to tilt it up. There's no nut on this thing or anything. It's going over the top. That means that the back and the sides and the top and everything is aligned. So now I'm going to very carefully turn this over. I'm going to drop the bridge on the floor for the 90th time. And I am going to take a syringe, once I get everything the way I want it, where I can see, and I'm going to slack these off a little bit at a time and put hide glue in and work my way around like you tighten up lug nuts. Here first, then there. We're not going to take anything apart. We're just going to leave this like this. Once we get the glue in there, we're going to push, and we're going to make sure that everything's right. And then we are going to take our friend, the binding tape holder, and we're going to be happy that we did the finish now and put on the sanding sealer, because once we start doing this, anything that's loose is going to come up. You see that? I'll give you glimpses along the way. Patience, guys, patience. Now you want to remember, along the way, you want a piece of this. You can put a screw in it. I have one that's got a screw in it that doesn't go all the way through, so I can just hold this, and that is my gauge to tell me that everything is okay. Get to each spot. This may have to go this way or that way, but the more time you spend here, the better your binding job is going to look. Okay, guys, I want to tell you that at this point, your best friend is your hot hide glue, a syringe like this full of hide glue that you're going to have to keep hot. Just remember that. And you've got a palette knife that you can come in and pry this up just a little bit and get your hide glue in there. You see that? So I'm just going to pop this up a little bit, and I'm going to go in and do my hide glue. Once it sets up, I want to make sure that everything is good. Want to rag with hot water, and once everything gets on there, no time for binding yet, guys. I'm just going to take this, put this, and pull it down and keep it in shape like that. Okay, guys, this is hide glue. It's in hot water. It's between 140 and 145 degrees, and this is it in a syringe. And I want to make sure that I have, see how that flows there? There we go. Now, I'm simply just going to take this bigger thing here, and I'm going to pry it up. And it's got a nice set of tips, and I am just going to apply that there a little bit at a time, like so. And I can take my palette knife, the smaller one, and come along and make sure that that hide glue gets stretched out all over the place. Pop this one in like so, and just do the spots between the clamps without turning this over. Welcome to my guitar Botox party. There we go. I'm so glad I put this finish on here. Some of the stuff I do seems to be crazy, but now, while the glue is still trying to set itself up, I can make sure that everything is lined up with my little piece of binding if I need to. And I can just come like this and pull that down in a couple of spots and make sure that everything stays tight. And there we go. I got a lot to do yet. You want to remember where the head block and the tail block are when you're putting this glue in here, because that's going to be your friend. And also as you're sliding your palette knife over, don't worry, it's going to spread the glue for you. And if you do have a little bit of overhang up here, that's good, because you can just take a file and pull it off and get it even with the binding channel, and everything will be okay. Okay guys, welcome to about a day and a half later. I want you to meet our special guest, J. Lyndon Prest, the duck straight out of Camp Douglas, Wisconsin, cultural capital of the world. So, I guess the contract my advertiser has with J. Lyndon Prest is that he'll do at least one more appearance in this fine episode. So back to the green room with you, J. Lyndon Prest. Everybody give it up for J. Lyndon Prest. Okay, so, like I said, it's about a day and a half later. We are going to start pulling these clamps off. And I have already done a few of these. These were a few token clamps left, like my token Lutheranism this is. Anyway, you'll remember that we put the neck on, we bolted it, we did all that, and now it's time to talk a little bit about putting on the binding. So, I reach in my fancy toolbox and I have this awesome file that I got from Stumac. It has no teeth on the side, either side, and on the end. So the idea here is we want to take a piece of binding and we want to make sure that this is uniform all the way around. So there's a couple things that can happen. Sometimes people put the sides on and then they use kerfing. This kerfing bends this way. It's shaped like a wedge. This is the gluing surface, the mating surface, easy, where the back comes up. Now, sometimes this is glued in like so on the inside, and then the back comes all the way up to the edge here. Then someone takes a binding channel cutter, which has a router bit right there, and a way to set the guide in and out, which gives you the depth of the binding channel, and you can set this router bit as to the depth from the back. And then you simply fire it up and just come along, and this part rides the body. And while you're using one of these, by the way, there's an episode that I did about the Mando base. Check it out up there, and you see me using one of these semi-proficiently. Anyway, in this design, what they've done is they've actually used part of the kerfing here to come up above the side to create this binding channel. That's an interesting design. So the goal here is, while we've got my box of cool stuff out, this is called purfling. It is small and thin, and you can create decorative treatments here by putting in alternating black, different colors, and take up any excess that you would have here that is behind the kerfing or the binding, like so. Decorative treatment, purfling. There are different kinds of binding. It comes in different sizes, thick, wide. You can use this to cut down. You can do anything you want with it. And then I have some that's already been cut that I would use, though. I'm going to use this piece for a Gibson mandolin, but I have this piece right here, and it is long enough that you mark the middle, and then you go all the way around up here. There's enough here to do one top or bottom, but the whole idea is to make sure that this fits in that channel smoothly everywhere. Now I will tell you that over time, binding will shrink a little bit. So if you get into old guitars like this one, you may run your finger here and find out that this binding has set in a little bit from the side of the guitar. That's not too bad. In fact, that may be a way, along with doing a little light coating of something or other here that I don't want to tell you about, to make it look like the binding was never changed. But if you look from this angle over here, it's ideal to have this binding be a little too tall, and it's easier to trim this down by scraping it. And then, of course, we can use a number of tools. We can use a Parachin guitar maker's knife. We can use, I had it here, it's my piece of tree box binding that is my favorite tool to use. Or you can even use this shank that I built out of a butter knife or something from some 1800s thing. You can use a guitar, a violin maker's knife, but this is my tree binding thing. It works great. You can also do the old razor blade with the part cut off that you don't want as wide as the binding. It's a lot easier to work this way than to try to scrape the binding that's too thick. So think about that. I'm going to get all this tape off of here, and then I'm going to flip it over, and we're going to make sure that that neck angle is still where it needs to be. Because if it's not, we're going to have to take this off. If it is, we're going to fill up our Botox, guitar Botox needle, and go along everywhere that there's any kind of a crack. And the last thing we do is get that done before we start putting the binding on. Once the binding goes on, we're going to be pretty good to go. I did notice up here while we're turning this over that there is a crack right there. You see it? Come on, Chick Flick Teal Pointer, quit chatting with J. Lyndon Prest. You see that right there, and there's one there. So I'm going to run a dowel in here and here and glue it and put Chick Flick Teal on the end so everybody knows that I'm the one that messed it up. And while we're here, we're going to put this here. Remember, we don't put the neck stand underneath the neck so we can get all confused. Is that going to be the right angle? That may be the right angle. That may be the better angle. So we've got our bridge. We're going to point the adjustment screws to the back where it goes. Can you see that? And then we are going to take our Acton version of the Nurse Ratchet ruler. We're going to make sure that that's down there. And we are going to make sure that it's the exact same place. That's what we want. So let me get all this tape off of here. Drop the bridge for the 19th time. And we'll start doing some binding. Okay, really quick. We put sanding sealer on here because most of this finish was coming off in flakes, and then we put several French polish coats on it, so therefore when I take the binding tape off, it comes off clean. Had I not done that, there would have been a ton of stuff stuck to it. But as I look here, let's try and move this camera closer without a big bunch of fanfare. Looks like we're going to have to drop it down just a tad. But right here, you can see that there's about a 0.5 millimeter where the back is a little bit short of where that binding channel went. So I know that I'm going to have to take a little bit of thickness off of this here. So this is a time where I come in here and just be very careful and hold this and take just a little bit off of, it's actually the edge of the kerfing that's sticking above, up out of the side of the guitar. And take my little piece of binding here and gauge it, and I've got just a little bit of a gap there, but again, that has no teeth. Let it ride the binding channel. If it's the other way where this would be a little bit tall, you just turn this over. This would ride the binding channel that way, and this is a really handy file. As far as files go, it seems to be a little bit pricey, but so is cost and effectiveness while you're doing work. I don't want to be dogging you here, but look, this no file on the end or on the sides, when you're coming into these waistlines, that's not going to do much for you. This right here is perfect because you can put the edge of the razor blade against the side, and this is taped off, so you're just going to be riding, it back and forth like this. The waist is where the binding is going to give you the most trouble, because when you're coming around this way and then wrapping around this way, of course it's going to want to pull up. That's why I always run the binding to here, stop, let everything back here settle up, glue up, and I'll put a piece of thin wood right here when I clamp everything down to keep it nice. But historically, this is where I've had problems getting binding to stick. So make sure that 90 degrees right there is 90 degrees with this little tool. Okay, the last thing I want to do is I want to brush this off, get all the dust off of it. Then I want to take a little bit of naphtha on a paper towel. And remember, because you've put sanding sealer and a couple of coats of French polish on this, it's going to be all right. And then if you feel anything, you can take a 1/4-inch chisel and just ride that edge like that. And if something hangs up, it'll take it off like so. But we're good there. Again, nice and clean all the way around. Wipe it off with naphtha, get any dust that's out of there, because it's finally binding time. Okay, here's my piece of binding. It's cut to do either a front or a back. I'm going to put the two ends together, put a piece of tape on it so I don't have to worry about that. Then I'm going to pull it together down here. I am not going to crease it, but I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to make a mark where the middle is going to come together there, and I'm going to come around and just do a small one right like so. Okay, a little bit about binding glue or adhesive or whatever you want to call it. It is not good for guitar finishes, ever. So, last thing I want to do is set this up here like so. So I have this piece of floppy, I use it for softeners on edges and on clamps and stuff, so I can put that there. I can put a piece of tape here. Again, having that sanding sealer and a couple coats of French polish on this thing make the big difference. Also, I want to make sure that I have everything protected, because here's the problem. If your bind-all, which is what this is, I use this, guys, use whatever you want. But if I pop this open, and this has been hot and cold, don't let that happen. Keep this in a stable place. 10 degrees and 110 degrees are not what this product is meant for. They like to have you use it at room temperature. So, let's say that don't ask me how I know things, because I just do. If I open this up right here, it may be under pressure, it may go all over the place. I don't want that. So I'm going to open this up away from my guitar, and what do you know, it's not doing that. I don't want to get over something and then squeeze it for the first time. I want to squeeze it down here, see this? And watch it come out very slowly. You see that? You can see it right there. I want to keep good control of this at all times. Sometimes squirt a little bit of it out so it's not boiling up there. Again, if it's hot, it's going to want to jump out at you. But keep your guitar protected and keep the lid for this stuff there at all times. Okay, let's talk about binding tape. Don't use duct tape or electrician's tape or whatever you happen to have. Get some binding tape, and you're going to want to put a bunch of this, tabs of it, about that long. Okay, you're going to put it over on the side. And again, the work that we did ahead of time on the finish with sanding sealer and French polish is going to make this stuff a lot easier to work with, because if you don't do those things and you're working with a degrading finish, you are going to end up with a lot more finish on the bottom of your tape. That is not what you want. Again, just like your binding adhesive, don't leave your binding tape out in a garage where it's going to be 20 below zero and then 95 degrees, because all of the adhesive gets weird. Okay? Last thing is, when you are going to be using something that's like this, it doesn't hurt to have that end taped together, where you kind of keep it draped down, and you may come along with a piece of wood like this that's wide enough to go across the body. That way you can put the binding up on one side while you're working. When it's flopping two different ways and all over the place, you don't want that. So let's start gluing. Okay, I have a small piece of tape here. I have where everything comes together. I'm going to mark that right there. I know that I have a mark right there on the inside, and I have that mark right there. That's in the middle. Make sure that that's in the middle, because you don't want to get up to the top and find out, oh, I don't have what I need up there. So when I put my binding glue on, I'm going to have a piece of this ready. I may want to go to the extent of taping off where I'm working, like so, at that channel. If you want to do that, great. Always remember that your finish has to be protected underneath the tape, or when you pull it off, there's going to be pieces missing. This is not a valuable guitar some of you people are working on. valuable guitars. Now, I can take a piece of cardstock or something like so, and I can, remember this piece of plastic is underneath there, you see it? I can put my binding adhesive on there instead of trying to manipulate it around the edge, and then I can take a small piece of wood and I can lay this in here like so. There's a number of ways to do this. This is a good one. Now I'm going to want to get all the way to the first curve here at the edge, because if I don't, I'm going to be trying to move all of this binding up and down and back and forth. You see that? We're not going to want to play putty or a caulking gun and try and squeeze it in after the fact. We want it along that edge like so. Now if we do have some that shows up just like there, we just want to take our rag and do a little bit of this, and we are good to go. Such pressure when you're looking on, you're doing it wrong. Of course I'm doing it wrong. I do it wrong all the time, so you don't when you do it, right? Okay, so now you're going to see why we have all this over here. We're going to take that mark, we're going to put that mark right there, because it's trying to lay down because of the weight over there. We just have to hold it like this, and we're going to pull it tight. We're trying to clamp this way, so you put it over here, pull it up, and then pull it in. And I'm going to want to go around and do it uniformly, kind of like lug nuts. So we're going to do that. Now over here, you're going to see that this piece of wood is coming in handy, like so, up here. I can see that over here it's starting to tack up. Make sure everything's seated and then pull. Seated, pull. Now I'm going to work on the side that's closest to me, so this other side over here, take a couple pieces of long tape, and I'm going to put it on the side like so, and then loosely put it where the binding is riding level and not diving up or down, because that's going to try to throw my angle off. I am going to move a few things here. I'm going to tear off enough binding tape to get up to here. Remember, we're going to stop at the belly. Okay, let me pull this out of the way where you can see it. We're going to stop at the waist and let it dry thoroughly, there and there. Once that's done, then we can move along. Okay, we're getting up to the radius here now, and I want you to see a couple of things. This flopping around all over up here isn't going to be good. I've released the tape that I had on the end, and now I've gotten this out of the way. This worked really well while I was working on the other side like so, to keep everything, because the more it's trying to twist this way, especially at the beginning, the worse it is. Now I'm going to need about 10 pieces of binding tape, so I'm just going to pull those off quick and just put them anywhere. Put them on stuff like this piece of clear flexible plastic that I have here, like so. You want more than less. Now I'm going to replenish my supply of binding adhesive. You see that there? Yeah. You put that down. Remember, everything is protected. Put this out of the way. Don't step on this. This stuff is, you drop it on the floor, you step on it, it's a mess. This stuff is fairly expensive. So, not as expensive as getting acetone all over your guitar finish, that's for sure. Okay. So I'm going to bring this up to about right here. Okay. And I think I'll put a piece of tape right there so I remember, because remembering things is getting increasingly difficult for me as I get older. Like a simple command like, don't buy another guitar. You might as well not say that to me because I'll forget. Okay. Now I'm going to take a little bit of this. I'm going to put it on the bottom edge like this, a little bit more right there. Then it's just a matter of, remember, it's going to try and fight you the closer it gets to the end, and especially to the waist. That's something else that fights me. The older I get, that's the waist. Okay, we're going to slack that off. Make sure that that is right down in that groove, and anything that comes up on the inside, the time to get it is now. Okay. Pull this firm. Now what's going to happen while this is drying, this upper bout here is going to try and pull the binding tape out of the radius here. So this is leather, 2 pieces, fold it in half, take a piece of painter's tape, put it like this, do that again. Don't worry that it's flopping over. Don't freak out. Don't make someone a good mother-in-law someday. Okay, now watch this. I'm going to put this right on that radius. You see that? I'm going to tape it. There and there. Now you understand. I knew what I was doing the whole time. Over here. Same thing. You don't want to do this 15 minutes after you put that on. Now, mysteriously, I have this clamp here. I have it set right where it needs to be, and I am going to go in to where that leather is on the radius, and I'm going to leave it alone. Okay guys, I want you to check this out. Sometimes the way the neck is set, the neck heel comes all the way up here, and it's down a tad to put some kind of decorative treatment on there or something. But in this case, it all comes together. So rather than having a line that is just right in the middle and sticks out like a sore thumb, I've cut both bindings at an angle like that, and then I can let those come together there, and it's less conspicuous, and I can take a dot of acetone and melt that together. But your best friends right here are a small chisel where you can come in like so and make sure that everything is level. This will cut by either scraping or going this way. It will cut the angle you need. Remember, you only have one shot at this. Your friend, the razor blade and the file are also great for making sure that everything comes together. But in the end, you want to make sure that this lines up good before you do this last bit of binding right there. All right, things are looking good here. I wanted to point out to you that there's a piece of binding tape sticking up right there and another one right there, because there was ever so slight a gap behind the binding between here and here, so I am going to be able to either take this piece of binding and thin it out and cut a wafer in there, or I can take a piece of wood shaving like poplar or maple, a small piece of purfling, and once everything is carved and okay, I will put that in there, glue that in there, and then blend a tad bit of acetone, and when I do the scraping it will virtually disappear. But now we're going to leave this thing sit for a while, and this is a good time to stop for the day and the episode. Hey guys, does it sound like I'm yelling? That's because I am, because it is raining outside and the roof of the shed is, well, you might like it, you might find it annoying. If you are one of those people that likes the romantic sound of rain and all that, TMI, TMI. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be shooting a live video on my CDLS Dad's Instagram here in a minute. So, how do you like my shirt? Worst in show. Who wants that? You know, well, I think that's what I got going on in here. You know, Bob the Junk Pile Arch Top won best in show, but the old mangled Monterey isn't that kind of guitar. So where we're at is we have, look at, I cannot believe how shiny that is and what a wasted surface this is. So we have put the binding on, and most importantly, we have, I'm looking for a couple things that I have here. My best friend in this whole thing has been a measuring device that measures in millimeters, not 32nds of a 1/18 64th millimeters. And this piece of binding, because when it comes time to finally put the back of the guitar on this thing, where the neck is, where the action is, and the playability of it all matters on the angle of the neck. And you learned that the neck stand is not always your best friend. So I want to show you something pretty cool. This guitar here, the 1950 silver tone. Remember this one? Playlist up there. Yeah, Tammy's signature on the back. I'll tell you what, I left something on here that will tell you the importance of whether the neck is right and your action is playable or not. And it is right there. Do you see the back of the guitar hanging over the side? Right there. You see it? Right there. Well, the difference between the neck and the strings and everything being out of whack and everything being really playable was, drum roll please, 5 millimeters. Let's look at this. 5 millimeters here is what set this neck angle. If I would have just gone and put the back on the way it was supposed to be, that neck angle would have come way up. More than 5, way down, which is, I guess, okay at some point until it becomes ridiculous. But check the build of this guitar out. It is actually as bad as this Harmony Monterey. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this binding settle itself in. And in the next episode, of course, we're going to scrape it. We're going to do some other things. We're going to fix those cracks right up here. And then It's already wired up and everything, so all we're going to have to do is plug it in, and I will see you then. Man, I put so much Aquanet into this. That rain is just going to be bad for all of this.